I heard you recently chat about this idea of disruption, and disruption seems like one of the COVID buzzwords, like pivot or whatever it is. But I heard you talk about disruption and just the importance of disruption for the sake of growth and change. I just wanted to start there by just unpacking sort of why you feel like disruption is something that we shouldn't like just hope passes, but actually maybe embrace. Yeah, I'll just throw it to you. I'd love to hear a bit more about what you meant by that.
Yeah. So Catherine Booth, who co-founded the Salvation Army, said that there is no changing the future without disrupting the present. And she's right.
Hmm.
Disruption is, spiritual code for awakening. And I think that we often, and I think this is probably because of our own addictions to control, like we want to be in charge. We view disruption through the lens of fear, and
Right.
it's a threat. It's a threat to what we can control, of course. But if you view disruption through the lens of faith, it becomes an invitation.
Hmm.
So I think that, no matter the disruption, there is an invitation in it if you can ask God to show you what it is that he's trying to invite you into. Again, I wrote a book called A Beautiful Mess, and really around this idea of how we've just said anything that's chaotic is the enemy and
Hmm.
order is a friend. And I think actually there is a divine order that is a deep friend. Of course, that's the creation account. But God's order, divine order, is so much different than our order.
Hmm.
And so it's about relinquishing a lot of the control and the need for us to figure out and to know what's going on and to surrender that to God, who actually does have a divine order that he's inviting us to find. And in the original creation account, of course, it says the Spirit hovered over the chaos and then spoke life out of it. So again, this idea that chaotic void, which is both empty, this feeling of like there's nothing here, which I think some people can relate to. And it's also the presence of this foreboding, like this is going bad. So it's
Hmm.
both. It's the absence of any kind of meaning, but it's also this like presence of like fear. In that spot, that chaotic place, the Spirit of God was hovering, just
Hmm.
waiting to create. And I think that's the image I'd like to tell people, like in those places where either you've got nothing or there's this foreboding sense of like, darkness and depth and deep, right there is where the Spirit of God is. And we've
Hmm.
been trained our whole lives to avoid those places because they're scary and they're out of our control. But maybe, just maybe, if we could ask God to help us, we could hover there too with the Holy Spirit and see what he might want to create.
Hmm. And help us make sense of some of the disruption we're feeling around us this week, this month, this season.
Yeah, I mean, I've got lots of friends who have said this COVID season, is sort of a globally forced Sabbath.
Hmm.
And I would say, we buy in. We're all economically bought into a billion-dollar industry that is virtually just distracting us from ourselves. And all of a sudden we're like, oh, okay, well, we can't do that. So, and I mean, there still are internal ways of distracting from yourself, but I feel like never before, at least in my lifetime, has there been this amount of time for us to press pause and to stop and to actually be able to think about what really matters, what I'm even doing and why I'm doing it. And do I want to do it later or not? And is it, the things that actually are underneath the surface, some of the
Hmm.
deepest things about what it means to be
Yeah.
human. What about even life and death and mortality? And I mean, all those things that we just push away and rage against in a distracted life. Here we are for months
Hmm.
now. And, we were talking before, but I think that even this season that we're in of, this Black Lives Matter, this BIPOC, the Black and Indigenous and people of color, and this moment that we're in, that I think is a real invitation. It's a disruption, a divine disruption of life as normal, and this invitation to take on racism
Hmm.
as a demonic force of evil in our society. Uh, wow. Like, I don't think we would even have been here if we didn't have months of getting to
Hmm.
deeper places and
Interesting.
really asking the question about what kind of world we want to live in. What kind of a life do we want to live? What do we want to do with our lives? What do we want to give to our kids? I think some of this existential angst that's come to the
Yeah.
surface is actually, we're seeing an overflow of that in this. Here's what we don't want. We don't want racism.